Brands can now edit their knowledge graphs in Google. What's the difference between B2B and B2C SEO? And how do you content market effectively around live events? All that and more in This Week in Organic, episode number 35.
This Week's in Organic. Live from London on thisweekinorganic.com.
Broadcasting live on authoritas.com/TWIO. You're watching This Week in Organic, the weekly show that debates the ramifications of the latest SEO and content marketing news. Sign up to watch the next show live at thisweekinorganic.com. Hello, welcome. I'm David Bain, and each week I'll be joined by some knowledgeable, opinionated folks to discuss the latest happenings and anything that impacts organic traffic. And as for you in the live audience, get involved. So click on the tweet or the post buttons to your top left-hand side and share the show with your own followers. And tell us what you think in the comments box to your right-hand side there as well. So let's find out more about today's loud guests that are joining us. So hopefully we'll be able to hear them okay there. We've got Sonia that's joined us there. Hi, Sonia. How are you doing?
Hello, I'm good, thank you. Hope you too. My name is Sonia Mazzotta, and I come from Global University Systems. I'm the head of SEO there.
Wonderful.
I would like to talk about the knowledge graph and then Wikidata as well.
The knowledge graph, yes, absolutely. It's interesting that Google appears to be letting you edit it now. So that wasn't available in the very recent past. So that could be another opportunity to optimize in the organic listings. And also joining us today is Andreas. Hello there. Or maybe not joining us today. Andreas, if you can hear me, what you need to do is refresh your screen again, and hopefully I'll be able to let you in again, and we'll be able to see you and hear you a little bit more effectively. So obviously he's left now, so he could hear me. We couldn't really hear us, but that's okay. We can have a decent conversation about quite a few different topics in terms of what's happening there. First of all, shall we move on to the topic of the knowledge graph, in fact, because that's the topic that you mentioned there, Sonia.
Yeah.
So what about that do you think may be quite appealing to SEOs?
Well, I think it's really important because obviously Wikipedia, which is the main source of information for Google, sometimes it can be outdated. And for this reason, it is really important for SEO people to have access to this sort of data, information, and making sure that we have also the correct keywords there in order to be recognized for as relevant to certain type of queries. So brands need to have a more power over the information they are obviously owning of. So
absolutely, yes. I mean, it's interesting. It was something that Google introduced, obviously 2-3 years ago. They appeared to be testing it just to begin with, but we've got Andreas trying to join us there, trying to find a silent spot there. That doesn't really seem to be that possible to find a silent spot there.
I'm really sorry, guys. I have to switch off from my internet connection, Wi-Fi to 3G to my mobile phone because really where I am.
Okay, I'll tell you what, Andreas. Well, I'll kick you out just now, and if you find an area that you're comfortable in, and then we can keep the conversation going after that. But don't worry, just find a good area for yourself, and we'll talk to you in a few moments' time. Okay. So yeah, with regard to this knowledge graph, I mean, it started off obviously to begin with. You had a long horizontal strip on the top of some Google search results. To begin with, it was bands, musicians, things like that that were appearing. Then after a while, it was Google Plus that started getting integrated into it, and brands, because they'd signed up with Google Plus, were getting greater prominence towards the right-hand side of search results there as well. Google perhaps have not given Google Plus that much love recently, so maybe it's surprising to some people that they still want to use these knowledge graph type results. But I suppose they're taking the results from third-party sites rather than actually relying on Google Plus now. So it's really important, as you said, Sonia, to actually get your brand listing perfected on these third-party sites.
Yes, precisely. As I said, gives more ownership to the brand in terms of what type of information should be displayed on Google. And also it's important for brand reputation. The knowledge graph is definitely something that needs to be looked at from that point of view. As you mentioned, that the Google Plus it's a source of reviews, and it definitely needs to be taken into considerations from SEO people.
So are you still an active user of Google Plus yourself?
Not that much, but I think it's definitely something that we need to look into in terms of for brand reputation. Personally, my Google Plus, unfortunately, is not that active, and I know, it's one of those things that I guess only SEO will be on Google Plus. But it is true that we need to take care of it more, definitely.
Yes, yeah. I'm in two minds about Google Plus, because obviously it's integrated into a lot of what Google offers nowadays. But as an active social community, apart from SEOs, how many people use it? Well, I was talking to Greg Gifford a couple of months ago, and he was saying that there are actually a few motorcycle communities on Google Plus, but realistically, there aren't that many communities on there, and it looks like Google are using it to create the next version of an integrated Google with lots of different products related to it, but they're perhaps not actually now focusing on it as a social network. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. I think so.
Yeah. We'll see, I guess, if Google want to make a further move in the future into social media now. But I guess the most important thing that it's trying to do at the moment is actually understand who their users are and what they actually want. And obviously, they've got a lot of information from being able to link these properties together, like YouTube and other things that people are using. But perhaps they don't have as much quality information as a site like Facebook has, who obviously people have signed up to that site given their demographic information. So do you think Google are playing catch up to Facebook in terms of actually trying to get information like that from its users?
Yeah, definitely. Through Google Plus, perhaps Google is trying to understand what is the social activity of the users, and perhaps trying to emulate Facebook from that perspective. So maybe there is a sort of a social kind of study there. But unfortunately, it looks like the Google Plus hasn't been a huge success, and the reason why users are on there is simply because by default, just by having a Google Gmail account, they would be involved. Hence, it's so basically has such a large database. And also, it's quite confusing in terms of reviews, as I mentioned earlier. It looks like you need to use Google Plus in order to leave reviews on local business, for instance. So, as I said earlier, it is important to keep an eye on it and making sure that the reviews are taken care of. And as a business, as a brand, those reviews needs to be looked after. Okay,
it's interesting that you talk about reviews as being one of the most important parts of Google Plus and Google Local maybe. What are a few tactics that businesses could do to encourage users, its customers, to actually leave reviews? Are there a few things that maybe you do as a business to actually try and encourage your customers to leave better reviews or more reviews?
Through mailing lists, subscribers, and trying to get all those users from the database, encourage them to leave reviews, especially if those are positive, obviously, and then through events and things like that. Okay, that's interesting, because that means that you're talking about integrating offline activities with online, and still a lot of companies are structured at the moment
with their digital marketing teams being completely separate, with their offline marketers. And it's so important to start to integrate things a little bit more in the future.
Absolutely.
Is that something that you've been doing for quite a while?
I've been doing it for a while, yes. Unfortunately, not my current role because it's so big and it's still working on integrating. But in my previous roles, I have been working on that, yes.
Okay. Well, one of the things in relation to Knowledge Graph and Google Plus is Wikidata. And we're seeing that a lot of Google answers are actually appearing as a result of semantic markup found on other pages around the web. So it's not necessarily pages on your own websites. It's other websites out there that are marking up data and giving Google greater confidence that that information must be correct. So it's actually providing results for Google answers. Can you see in the future it being more likely that Google will rely more heavily on third-party websites for this markup data rather than your own brand websites for this schema markup?
Maybe. To be fair, Wikidata has had quite a few critics actually because of it's so easy to change things and there's no need to even reference sometimes. It's quite dangerous. So my understanding is that Wikidata is replacing Freebase. So it's basically the new version is very correlated to Wikipedia, and maybe the reason why Wikidata is basically replacing Freebase is because of it's quite easy to change things. My understanding is that probably it's got to do with Hummingbird. So there is a connection between entities and properties. So Google, depending on the will basically retrieve the correct search listings to the user's query.
Okay. We've got Andrea's trying to join us again there. You've got a little bit of
sorry, can't see
noise
anymore.
there, Andreas. So I'll tell you what we'll do. We'll get your opinion on a couple of things there, and we'll see if you can perhaps mute yourself when you're obviously not being part of the discussion. But with regards to schema markup and the knowledge graph, we're talking about the fact that Google are obviously looking to take information from third-party websites. What kind of experience have you got in relation to that? Okay. So I'm not sure if Andreas is managing to see us at all there. So Andreas, can you hear me there? Okay, so we've got to assume that Andreas's headphones isn't actually working today. So what I'm going to do is actually going to kick him off again there as well. And so Andreas, if you can hear me, obviously get to a quiet spot, and then hopefully you can come back in there again. So we've got a couple of guests here that haven't been able to join us that well. Hopefully we're going to have Sonia pop back in a second there as well. So to summarize what we're discussing there, obviously we had the knowledge graph to begin with. That was at the very top of search results at the very beginning. It now seems to have moved towards the right-hand side of search results, which appears to be more of a permanent position for it there as well. And obviously Google was actually taking information there from third-party sites to actually make that up there as well. So we've got a couple of guests just trying to join us again there as well. Sonia, can you hear me there?
I can hear you. Apologies.
Oh,
looks like my laptop decided to betray me.
That's okay. That's okay. We can hear your audio. We saw you for a bit, so so that was great. This seems to be the day that every one of my guests seems to decide not to be able to join me properly, but not a problem at all. But I mean, it's good to have you on anyway on audio and offering your opinion on that. I assume that you can hear me quite well yourself.
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay, great. So yeah, it'll be intriguing to see what happens there in terms of the data that Google gets from third-party sites. The most important thing, as far as I'm concerned, from Google Answers is the answers have to be completely reliable, because users and other websites will get very frustrated if Google start delivering answers directly at the top of its search results that aren't the correct answer. Surely Google should only actually be answering questions if it's a fact, it's a simple thing that needs to be answered yes or no. If it's trying to drive traffic either to its own properties or to other websites, then that's not a good user experience at all. Well, what's your general opinion of direct answers in Google search results?
I think it's generally quite good, I have to say. With the Hummingbird especially, things have really improved. But in terms of Wikidata, as I said, there's quite a few concerns with regards to the lack of resources, and apparently there is a permissive license which allows third parties to use its content without attribution. So it's a quite powerful tool for SEO people, certainly. But I think it will be definitely reviewed in terms of quality. Yeah, it is a bit risky for the users, whether they're going to receive the correct answers. But generally speaking, Google is quite good at it.
And have you ever tried to optimize a website in order to try and appear as a direct answer in Google search results?
Direct answer in terms of, sorry, what do you mean as a direct answer? Just a general question?
Yes, yeah. I mean, sometimes obviously in the top of Google search results, it will give you the direct answer to something,
like
and then the resources something. Exactly, yes.
Obama's wife kind of thing.
Yeah.
No, I haven't optimized for that kind of answers yet, no.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's something that has increased as a percentage of search results quite significantly over the last year. I believe off the top of my head, it's something like from 18% to about 30% of search queries now have a direct answer at the top of it. And that's obviously something else that can drive traffic away from what you're trying to do. So you can't just rely on maybe your organic search results for your traffic anymore.
That is true. Certainly something that we need to take into account.
So do you see yourself as an SEO also getting more involved with social media and other forms of digital marketing then?
Yeah, certainly. It's definitely correlated. The social media helps to spread the voice and helps to reach influencers, and we got the social signals even as a perhaps a ranking factor. So definitely something that needs to be looked at. So
that's a debatable point, is it? Is social media a ranking factor or not? You know, are those signals a ranking factor? It's like the meta description, because the meta description is obviously important. It can influence people's click-through from search results, and if you have a higher click-through rate, then that probably positively impacts your rankings. But most people say that the meta description isn't part of Google's algorithm. However, if you have a great meta description, then it encourages click-throughs, so it does improve it anyway. So it's not about whether something is part of Google's algorithm, it's whether something influences your rankings ultimately. And social shares, even if they aren't actually listed as part of Google's algorithm, then as long as if your content's good, your social shares are probably going to positively impact the amount of users sharing what you do, and that in turn will probably impact positively your search results.
Yeah, I think about the exposure. I think about the relevancy of who shares the information or the content. So I think all these factors needs to be taken into account.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, one other article that I found this week was an article called "What's the difference between B2B and B2C SEO?"
Yeah.
A couple of days ago, a guy called Keith Hodges published an article on B2Bmarketing.net on the differences between B2B and B2C SEO. He wrote 5 different points, and that was quite interesting for me because you know, I'm head of growth for Authoritas.com, and we focus on B2B heavily, but I've worked for B2B, B2C type organizations in the past. So it was interesting to think about, you know, the different way that you do things as an SEO based upon the type of business. And I think maybe a lot of SEOs are guilty of treating every business as the same and just using the same tactics to try and optimize different businesses. Is that something that resonated with you as well?
Bearing in mind that I never really dealt with B2B, but I agree with what the article says, because the type of SEO activity has to be different. The B2B completely relies on a different market, and you need to really have a deeper understanding of the different cycles within the sales, and then you need to basically do the keyword research based on that. So yes, it is a different approach, a different type of optimization for B2B. B2B looks at leads, whilst the B2C looks at sales, and there's different types of KPIs. I think I do agree with that article, definitely.
Yes, yeah. I did a little bit of consultancy work for a big management consultancy, and they were just very focused on just getting more visits to their website and improving their brands, but they didn't have any call to action on their website. But they were quite happy with those as metrics. But obviously, if you're a B2C company that are selling products which maybe only cost £50 each or something like that, then you're looking for a sale to happen pretty quickly, and that influences the kind of keywords that you're going for. If you're just looking for visits to demonstrate that you are a knowledge leader, then perhaps it's longer keyword phrases and not talking about your own products and services. But if you're B2C, maybe it's actually call to action keyword phrases in relation to exactly what you sell.
Yeah.
And also, you know, the length of the sales cycle is something that that jumps out as well. I mean, B2Cs can be 12 months or even more, certainly.
Yeah.
Quite different types of SEO. Lastly, keyword research for B2B. Maybe agencies, or at least point 5 in the article said that agencies don't really have to understand the business of a B2C company. They just have to actually understand the products they sell. But if you're a B2B business, then if you have an agency doing keyword research on behalf of them, then you really have to understand the business, understand the challenges that the potential clients are facing before actually acting on that business's behalf. So I thought that was probably the most interesting point for me, because it made me think, yeah, actually that's really spot on, because unless you really understand a B2B type business, you can't really do a good job for them from a keyword research and SEO perspective. That's my thinking anyway.
Yeah, I agree.
Oh, okay, good stuff. You agree? Hopefully everyone else agrees. That'd be a very easy conversation to have there. I'm not sure if we're going to have Andreas popping on again. Obviously, he was having challenges with his audio there as well. We might have had Chris Green popping on there as well. But that lets us have a more intimate conversation, and perhaps even gives other people viewing an opportunity to pop on as well. So if SEO, if content marketing is obviously your area of focus, and you'd like to be involved in the conversation, feel free to click the call-in button and perhaps be involved with the conversation there as well. But coming up, we're going to be talking about the fact that Twitter is rolling out a new algorithmic timeline. And we're also going to be asking the question, how do you content market effectively around live events? But first of all, I just want to point out the fact that Authoritas is actually going to be broadcasting Brighton SEO live on our website. So if you can't actually go to Brighton SEO, then you can watch the whole event live, the main stage live on our site. So just go to authoritas.com/Brighton SEO, and you can sign up for free to watch Brighton SEO live. And Sonia, I believe you're going to be speaking at Brighton SEO.
Yes, I am.
Wow. Okay, that's superb. Is that on the main stage or another stage there? Do you know that yet?
It's going to be on a small stage, so there would be about 100 guests. I'm quite happy about that, actually, because I'm not, I don't cope very well with large audiences. It's going to be a personal challenge, and so fingers crossed it will go well.
I'm sure it'll go very well. So do you know what topic you're actually going to be talking about?
Yes, it's going to be about why brands should be on Google News. What are the SEO benefits?
Right. Okay. That's intriguing, actually, because you can drive quite a bit of traffic from Google News, can't you? Yeah.
And it's also very tricky into getting into Google News, actually. So I'm going to share some tips on how to avoid the obstacles.
Okay. Well, if you're not speaking on the main stage, that means that unfortunately our live broadcast of the event isn't going to include your tips there as well. So if you're listening to this, then you're going to have to get along to Brighton SEO in person to hear Sonia's tips. So that should be quite intriguing. So hopefully I'll be able to make it along to that one there as well. So all the best with that anyway.
Thank you. Hope to see you.
Great. One other topic that we were going to talk about is the fact that Twitter are introducing more of a timeline where you now have an option to actually just view top tweets. And that actually quite appealed to me because, I follow some people who I feel are a little bit repetitive with what they tweet about. Maybe they're a little bit too self-promotional, and they just tweet the same thing, just twice a day, every single day, and you're just thinking, I don't know if I can be bothered with this. And instead of unfollowing that person now, perhaps if I just tick the button, well, I only want to see the top tweets, perhaps that will encourage them to focus on not quantity, but a little bit more quality when it comes to tweeting. Are you a big tweeter, Sonia?
I have a relationship of love and hate with Twitter. I find it quite very powerful social media channel. If I'm not careful there, I can be in trouble, basically. But I think yes, it's good that Twitter is reviewing a bit the type of timelines, and then it's good that there would be a bit of quality rather than quality. I agree with you in that.
So love-hate relationship. So what's the things that you hate about Twitter then?
It's basically that sometimes it just I feel as you really need to I don't know. It's just I'm not a big user of Twitter, so it's just a personal thing. But
are you a fan of other social networks, or is it more just Twitter that you don't love that much?
I prefer Facebook personally because I know I can share whatever I think with my friends without worrying about
what the world sees.
Yeah, exactly. No, I think Twitter is great also for news. I normally keep an eye there just to see what it's pretty much very quick in getting any sorts of news. So I think it's great. It's a great tool of information. But yeah, personally, I'm more of a passive person on Twitter, unfortunately.
You're more of a watcher rather than a writer.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, so be careful what you write if Sonia's following you then, yes.
Yes.
We've got a comment in the chat here saying that behind this timeline is not a way for Twitter to analyze us a little bit more. So that's interesting, because obviously Twitter has had challenges with actually making money. It needs to make money. Its last kind of reported profit, or was a loss, in fact. So not really a profit at all. Facebook don't have that challenge at all. So one of the things that Twitter obviously need to do is understand its users a little bit more, and perhaps actually deliver more targeted adverts. Would more adverts on Twitter, Sonia, actually put you off using Twitter completely, do you think?
Kind of, yeah, probably. I don't want to see too many ads there, but it's not as bad as Facebook, I guess.
Yeah, Facebook. Well, I mean, but you don't have a love-hate relationship with Facebook. Even though you like using Facebook, you'll put up with the adverts if it's a network that you really find useful and enjoy using.
Yeah, definitely, because of the privacy settings.
Yeah, absolutely. And another comment there saying, don't forget, when the product's free, you are the product. So obviously that means that when you're actually using something, such as even Google's products, you are delivering your information to that service provider, and then they can obviously tailor advertising towards what you do. So I guess whatever you're doing, you have the choice as to whether you're actually going to pay for a product, or if it's going to be free. You've got to question why it's going to be free, and what you're willing to put up with in terms of giving information to that particular service, that particular brand, in order for them to provide you with that service. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, it'll be intriguing to see what Twitter does over the next year, because obviously the focus is on profit. They're going to make quite a few changes, so watch this space. But let's just move on to our final topic, which is quite a few brands use Snapchat to advertise using the Super Bowl. And Snapchat is something that I've tried out. I haven't really got into massively, but there seems to be a boom in Snapchat at the moment. But it had me thinking, well, surely it means that there's a bit more of a boom about producing content around live events. There's a real opportunity for a lot of businesses to actually be involved with content marketing at the same time of these live events going on, and maybe even take advantage of things like Google News as part of these live events to distribute your content. So you mentioned your talk at Brighton SEO obviously is going to relate to Google News. Do you find that one of the best things to do with Google News is to actually try and write your content based upon events that are actually happening at that moment in time?
Yeah, definitely. Because it's news. Writing and news related to a big event is a way of getting exposure, and therefore generate traffic for the website. So I believe that Google News is another channel as social media channels, and as a way of getting exposure. I've seen a very interesting presentation from the managing director of Twitter a couple of years ago in a conference, the SES London. Mm-hmm. It was talking about this, actually, was how it is important for brands to be present during the live events, massive events such as the Super Bowl, and even engaging with celebrities or famous people is really important. You really need to have a plan in order to make it happen, because obviously it generates interest and as I said, exposure.
So, I mean, do you not think, though, that it needs to be a plan based upon what you do as a company? I mean, for instance, if you happen to come across a celebrity, can you, if you're a brand that isn't really related to what that celebrity does, can you still try and actually relate your content to them and generate visitors to your website in the hope that people will then find out about your products and services? Or should you only try and focus on events and hopefully interview celebrities who are very relevant to exactly what you do?
I think you need to do both. You really have to do both in order to generate more awareness around your brand. You really have to think outside the box in order to get attention. Something really quirky and you know, funny always works. If there will be an occasion in the future, I will share some examples that I found.
Well, I mean, if you'd like to share one example just now, feel free.
Yeah, I don't have it now, but okay. Yeah, I will share it.
Okay, that's intriguing. That's intriguing, because a lot of SEOs tend to focus on the keyword phrases that are immediately relevant to that business.
Yeah.
And it's becoming increasingly difficult, certainly for some industries, to compete effectively and give yourself a good opportunity to drive traffic as a result of that. So more progressive SEOs are involved with other forms of marketing, but also are one step away in terms of the keyword phrases that they actually research and try to optimize for. They're not thinking about the types of phrases that people are likely to type in relation to that product or service. They're thinking about how to actually capture people before they even search for the keyword phrases. And that's quite a tough point to actually enter the market at. I mean, do you have any thoughts in terms of how a business would actually think about the keyword phrases to optimize for that aren't directly related to what they do?
We're still talking about big events, or is this a more general question?
It's more of a general question, really.
Okay. Well, in that case, obviously, with the keyword phrases, we're looking at optimizing through the perhaps guides and having content on the website which covers as much as possible on the topic that you would like to cover. So we have mentioned the algorithm of the hummingbird, so that really helps. So obviously the quality of content and the length of it is definitely a hot topic with that.
Okay. One other thing I was thinking of is also within Google Analytics and other analytics packages, you can start to see things like the demographics of your users and to see what interests are more likely to be relevant to them. So you can start to see things like the age profile or the average age profile of who visits your website, and also maybe what categories of things that are of particular interest to them. It could be technology, it could be travel, or something like that.
Yeah.
So you can take that information from Google Analytics and then maybe even actually build your future content marketing campaign around that.
Absolutely.
Is that something you've actually done?
Yeah, definitely. It is data that we capture and again we analyze and we base our content marketing on that. So it's definitely something that we need to look at. Yeah. Also, with regards to the tone of voice, when we decided to write an article and things like that, we definitely look the type of language that the users are using. So it is crucial to know your target audience in order to have a targeted content marketing campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of people talk about having a buyer persona as well, having that one ideal customer in mind, actually thinking about them as an individual as opposed to thinking about them as a group of people. Yeah.
So it's a marketing thing. So we think about segments. We think about user persona. It really depends on your strategy. User persona is more relevant in my opinion for the online environment, whilst the segments is more kind of more classic type of marketing. So yes, if the user persona is definitely an answer for us.
Okay, okay. And do you think that should be an answer for most businesses, or is it only for certain types of businesses?
It depends on the type of business, of course, but generally online, I think the user persona is probably the answer.
Probably a good thing to do. Okay, intriguing.
I think so, but it depends, of course.
And do you think that most SEOs are quite good at understanding things like that? Or do you think in general too many SEOs are just still a little bit too much focused on keywords and links and the actual site itself rather than actually thinking of users?
I'm hoping that we're going towards the user, because that's what Google is looking at, providing the best user experience. So we need to make sure that the user is at the center of our attention. So we don't optimize for the search engine, we optimize for the user. Bearing that in mind, obviously it means that we will have to provide the best website, the best content, and obviously the best campaigns for our users. And obviously, hopefully, they will find us online in a better way.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, well, that just about takes us, I reckon, to the end of this week's episode. So just in a second, I'm going to ask you for one takeaway from our conversation that you think our listeners should go away and do in their businesses. So just before I do that, I'll offer one myself. And actually, because the initial part of our conversation, we were talking about Google's knowledge graph and where it gets data from as well. So one step I would recommend people to actually do is have a think about where Google might take data from in relation to your industry, and have a look to see if your company information, your results are up to date and relevant and contain all the right logos, the right addresses, the right phone numbers as well. Because the more other results out there from websites that are of quality, that contain the right information about your business, the more confident that Google will be about the information on your website that you provide them. So the more trust they will actually have in your domain. What's your takeaway? What's your thoughts, Sonia?
Yes. So definitely the takeaway is keeping, well, thanks to the knowledge graph, we can keep up to date our brand's information. So keep an eye out there and have a look on Wikidata, see how we can optimize connecting entities and properties. Quality over quantity.
Quality over quantity, absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. And that's so much more fun to be involved with, because years ago it used to be about getting as many links as possible, or syndicating your content to as many places as possible. But of course, if you do that, you're not going to be able to see where that content is consumed. You're not going to be able to interact with people who are actually consuming your content. If you focus on a few core websites to interact on, then you can build that quality-orientated relationship with your potential customers, rather than actually just focusing on driving numbers to your website.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. If our listeners would actually like to find out more about what you do, is Twitter the best place to follow you on, even though you don't like it that much?
Yes, of course. You can follow me on Twitter. Hopefully, I'll be able to share more insights and more personal, more experience in what I do. So yes, apologies if sometimes I tweet silly things. That's just me. Hence why I have a love and hate relationship about Twitter. But yes, please follow me.
Who everyone on Twitter has tweeted something silly, and that's the nature of social media, isn't it? It's understanding the personality behind that person.
Yes.
It would get a bit boring if it was just SEO content all the time.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Well, I'm David Bain, Head of Growth at Authoritas, providing big data solutions to give your enterprise the content marketing edge. Sign up for a demo of our platform at authoritas.com. And you can also find me interviewing online marketing gurus over at digitalmarketingradio.com. Now, if you're watching this show as a recording or listening to the show as a recording, remember to watch the next show live. So head over to thisweekinorganic.com, sign up there and be part of the live audience for the next show. But for those of you watching live, we also have that audio podcast, of course, of previous shows. Again, you can get a link to that at thisweekinorganic.com if you just sign up there. But until we see you again, have a fantabulous weekend. And thank you all for joining us. And adios. And thank you again, Sonia. Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.